You've downloaded and printed my Gen3 Gauntlets. Well, first off, thank you. But you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I RTFM if there's no N? Simple. Watch this Gen3 assembly tips video. In this video, I'll show you how to go from this to this. Ready? Here we go.
Okay, this is hopefully going to be a really short video. I'm just going to be doing some very basic tips on the assembly of the Gen 3s. There are tons of pictures that show where all the little parts go. The thing I'm going to focus on in this video is the assembly or the installation of the threaded inserts that I use, the type of screws that I use, alternatives to those, and the brass tubing that I use for the flamethrower and how to assemble that. So basically, we'll go ahead. Oh, and we're also going to be talking about the new electronics tray that is designed to hold in circuit boards. Designed to hold in circuit boards for your gauntlets if you want to have screens here and here. Back here, you just put the alphanumeric display. I use the one from Catso Props on Etsy, and it works great. So, we'll start off with the threaded inserts. These are the ones that I get now. When I first designed the cavities for the threaded inserts to fit in, the threaded inserts were quite a bit larger. They're now currently not quite as large. So I have to use a trick. Originally, I was gluing these in with either super glue or epoxy, and now I like to heat set them. And we'll be doing that in just a second. If you're going to install threaded inserts, and you don't have to, if you decided on the pieces that you want to use and you don't think you're ever going to need to take them off of your gauntlets, then just glue them on. I created the screw attachment system so that if you wanted to build your gauntlets and then later on maybe add some electronics, add some lights, or a soundboard or something, then it would be very easy to remove the parts and add whatever gizmos you want to. The other reason is for painting purposes. So it's a lot easier to paint this separately than when it's attached to this. So if you want to get in and do some fine detail work, you know, it's a lot easier to be able to paint this way. But you don't have to. If you want, paint all this stuff, leave a bare area here with some tape, and then you'll have bare surfaces to glue to. So yeah, you don't have to use the screws, but if you do want to use the screws, then here's what I do. I'm using M3s. The reason why is because I got a lot of them. I also have a lot of these threaded inserts. The threaded inserts got smaller and better, but I didn't adjust the holes because the model was already out there, and I would have had to have gone through and adjusted holes on every single model that I use screws on. Yeah. So what I did was I came up with a solution. One of the solutions is you could go with an M4 screw and an M4 threaded insert. They are bigger and they'll probably fit in these holes just fine. But what I did was in Orca, I made these little cylinders, these little spacers that once I prep the hole, I can just put these right in. And I'm going to show the hole prep right now. Okay, so I've got my trusty Hoto drill. And as I suspend myself out into the middle of the screen here to put this in a very unnatural way so you can see it, I'm going to now use it to open up these holes just a little bit. And there's only going to be 6 of them unless you plan on prepping out both whistling birds. You just basically need to just open these up a little bit. You don't need to drill into it. All you're doing is widening this hole. So the drill will naturally stop when it hits the bottom. As long as you're not applying any pressure, it's not going to go in. So go ahead and do these. Okay, and then we'll do the flamethrower. All right. Get some straight in. Just opening these up a little bit. And that concludes our time with the drill. Just a few seconds, really. I don't even think it took a minute to do that. So now, these little spacers, I will provide the STL file for these spacers, but you can make these yourself in Orca. I don't know if you can do this in Cura. Cura is a very old slicer, and I don't know what kind of updates it gets. People write plugins for it, but in my opinion, it's pretty clunky. If you want to use something that's got a lot more utility, I would switch to either Orca or Prusa Slicer. If you have a Bamboo Labs, then obviously you're going to use theirs. So these will now fit in. One side's going to be a little cleaner than the other, depending on how you print them. I always use a skirt because these small parts tend to pop off the bed. I print this very slow at about 20% speed. But once you've opened up the hole with the drill, you can pretty much press these in. And you want to get them flush, so you can use a tool to kind of help get them in here flush. But they should fit all the way down in there. Okay, that one's good. So we'll go ahead and do a couple more. And I'm just going to show this technique with the flamethrower, but you'll do the same process for the whistling bird and the whipcord. So we'll get both of these in. Sometimes they're stubborn. I'm pulling this one out. I feel like I might have gone in the wrong way with that one. Or it's deformed somehow. So we'll get another one for the second hole here. And again, I'll go with the clean end. One end is going to be a little cleaner than the other. This one has some flash on it, which you don't really need to clean off because it's going to all be melting anyway. So we'll go ahead and pop that in, get it flush. And the next thing we'll do is, shooting the, go from this. Okay, so there's that. All right, so now we're going to prep out our screws. These are not the screws that you'll use for the entire gauntlet. This is a 16 millimeter M3 screw button head, and this goes into the whistling birds. So the whistling birds use 16 millimeter if you're using the Din Djarin one. Okay, the other one, the Boba Fett one, uses a 10 and a 12. The flamethrower and the whipcord use 12 millimeter M3 screws, but they're all M3. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep out our threaded inserts. So we're only going to do 2 right now because, as I said, the process is the same for the other parts that require threaded inserts, should you choose to use them. You'll notice that the threaded insert has distinct top and bottom. This side, I believe, is the bottom. I'm trying to see if I can get that in there. So this side with the edge and no knurling is the bottom. That's going to go into the hole. And then you have a top part that is clearly knurled. Let's see if we can get it a little better. It's hard to see. There we go. Okay, cool. So we're going to put the screw in on the knurled section, like so. And you want to thread it all the way on till you're just seeing the bottom of the screw poking out. You don't want it sticking out. You just want it flush with the bottom, or even inset just a little bit. Not too much. Just a little bit. So back that off just a little bit. Okay, so now you've got your screw. They do make a tool that you can put on the end of a soldering iron and press fit these in without putting a screw in. That's great. That's extra stuff for me to break out that requires power. So I just do it this way. It works great for me. It's super fast. But if you want to get the tool, there is a tool available that will press fit these in using a soldering iron. So I take a little torch, little butane torch, just like this, and I'm just going to heat up the brass, just the brass. I mean, the screw will heat up too, so don't touch this when you put it in. And you want to do this for about 10 seconds, not too long. Then you're going to just take it and push it right in. And take it and install it into the hole. It will actually stop when it hits the bottom, okay? And then you want to check your alignment. So we want to make sure this screw is properly aligned. And it feels like it is, it looks like it is. Now we'll do the other one. So again, we want the screw to go in on the knurled side. And we're going to thread it on there till it's just about to peek out of the bottom. And we'll back it off a little bit. Grab it with our pliers. And we'll go ahead and heat this up for about 10 seconds, just the brass. Get the blue part of the flame onto the brass. Okay. And now we'll just line it up with the hole and set it in. Now this one you kind of have to be careful with because it's pretty thin in between. It's pretty thin in between these holes here where the brass tubing will go. So if you feel like it's pushed in too far, then just back it out a little bit. It's still hot. The plastic is molten and it will solidify around this screw. And if you have to, you can just kind of push this around to kind of straighten it a little bit and make sure it's generally perpendicular to this surface. You don't want the screws like going off at weird angles. You want them to try to be as perpendicular to the surface as possible. Let's see if I can get this to line up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. These will cool. Give them a couple minutes to cool. You can go work on the whistling bird or the whipcord while you're waiting for them to cool. So while we're waiting for these to cool, we'll go ahead and install the electronics tray, which basically goes in like this. This is the inside where your electronics would go. This is the outside, and this is how it's designed to sit in. All right. This does give you just enough space to put in an OLED display from, say, Mandalorian or Hephaestus props. Basically, the 1.3 inch OLED displays will fit in here just fine. Also, the Mando pewter. They make a 1.3 and a 1.8 Mando pewter. This is designed for the smaller one, not the bigger one. The 1.8 is a lot bigger. So what you want to do is set this in to where it's like this. All right. Then we have these two. These are going to be the rests. When I built this, it was kind of for a custom set of gauntlets, and I didn't have a lot of time to really spend on engineering this, but it's pretty straightforward. You'll see that there's two angles on the ends here. There's an angle here and an angle here. One angle is steeper than the other. The steeper angle goes towards the back. It's basically designed to kind of line up with that line right there. Okay, so it's going to set in there like this. This one's going to set in here like this. So what I'll do is take my X-Acto knife, and using the back of it, this blade is hammered, but it will work fine for this. You can also do this with a file. I will hold this in. You can use clamps to hold this in. In fact, that's not a bad idea. Let's go get some clamps. Okay. So we've got a couple of small clamps here. We're going to go ahead and clamp this in so that it stays put, doesn't move around. Okay, and then we can put our stops in. Okay, so now this part here, you'll see there's a little crease. This part will not receive any glue. This is what the tray is going to rest on, and we do not want to glue the tray in. You want to be able to remove the tray that has your electronics on it, so if you have to service them, it'll be easy to do that. Or certainly a lot easier than if you had everything hot glued in. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll take my X-Acto knife using the back of the blade, and I will just scribe along the edge. Like I said, you can also use a file, like a sharp point file, small hobby file will work for this. Anything that's got a fairly sharp, fine point, doesn't have to be super sharp, just enough to, scratch the plastic. But that's basically all we're doing. You could also get in here with a Sharpie and just mark the edge that way too. But basically what you'll end up with is a little etched line, which you can just barely see it in there, but it's there. And it's describing the perimeter of the part. So we've got that one in, and we'll set that aside. If you want to mark these left and right, you can certainly do that. I'm going to go ahead and put this one over to the right because I know it's for the right side. Actually, it's for the left side, so we'll put it over on the left. Now we'll do this one. Same thing. All right. So we'll just go ahead and scribe this. And when you change your hand position, make sure you pin this thing down so it doesn't move. Seems like that one is that one bigger? Sometimes these break, so it really doesn't matter if it does. If you lose part of it, it looks like I've lost part of it on this one. It's not really a huge deal. There's still more than enough shelf for the tray to sit on. So we'll go ahead and scratch that. All right, so now we've described the perimeter. And the next thing we'll do is we'll just go in, again, using the back of the blade, just go in and scratch up that surface. This gives more surface area for your super glue to adhere to, because we're going to use a very thin coat of super glue. We're also going to use an accelerant. Okay, so we'll do the same thing over here. Again, you can do this with your file. Okay, you just want to get in here and scratch this up. All right. And then, if you've done that, you want to take some 80 grit sandpaper and just go over the back of this part. You don't need to do this section. This is not going to get glue. So just do this larger area. Okay. Sides. It's the same length. Yeah, they are, actually. It doesn't look like we lost any of this. Nope. So it sits differently for some reason. Unless I had the wrong one on there. Did I use the left one again? Maybe I did. Well, it'll all work out. Okay, so here is our part. It's going to go like this. Okay, so what we want to do is go ahead and have the side we just sanded facing up, and we're going to go and hit them with a small amount of accelerant. All right, so now we are going to be ready to do our parts, and this is the one that goes on this side, so we're going to start with this one here. We are going to put a very, very, very thin bead of super glue down. I'm trying to see if I've got something I can smooth this out with. Get a toothpick. All right. So I'm just going to use this little swab end. You can also use a toothpick. This is just what I happen to have available. You want to put just a very thin line of super glue along there. And then what we're going to do is, and we want to stay in our braided area. You don't need to make this super wide. You just want to get it spread around enough to where it's going to make decent contact with what you're trying to do. Okay? So now we're going to go ahead and pop this in. And we have very little time, but we're going to just hold it in place for about 3 to 5 seconds. And even though that kicker has evaporated, basically, it does leave enough residue on the surface to where it will work. Okay, that's in. All right, so now we'll go ahead and do the other side again. We're going to just use a very, very thin bead of glue. Spread it around. And we'll go ahead and get our plug in here. And when you push down on it, you'll feel it set into place the way it needs to. You just want to make sure that this shelf is kind of going over this right here. Okay, you can see how this shelf right now is overlapping this tray. Let me take this off now. That feels like it's good. I can take this off now. Okay, so the way it's designed is you can just slide this in, okay? Just like that. Obviously, you're going to want to clean the plastic up so that the action is smoother and easier to do. So, all right. So now we got the back piece. The back piece, I kind of left the back piece up to you, how you might want to do it. There's a couple of ways you can do it. Today, we're going to do it with hot glue. But I have done it a way where I put in a screw. Where is the back piece? Oh, it's right here. Okay, so here's the back piece. You'll know that you got it on right when you see it line up with, there's a flat side and then there's a side with some notches. Okay, it should, see, that is wrong right there. Okay, you can see there's kind of a gap on this side where it's not flush with the interior. So flip it around, and now it's a lot better. Okay, it's definitely conforming to that shape. So this is basically designed to retain the back end. This piece should be removable in some way. So what I'm going to suggest is do not use super glue to attach this. Unless you're so confident that your electronics are never going to fail and you'll never need to pull this tray out, don't super glue it. So you have two options. You could use screws, very small screws, and I have some very small ones. They look like this. There. Okay. I bought a bag of these little tiny screws that I use for my life support box. They're very, very small. They're Phillips head. I can just get one in the palm of my hand. Okay, they're very small, but they are long enough to go through the thinner sections of this part and short enough to where they won't poke out the top of the gauntlet. However, I suggest you think about that. Make sure you have small enough screws. And you may have an even better idea than this one. This is wrong. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to use some hot glue. Now, hot glue comes in a couple of different formulas. There's the one they make for kids, for crafting, for gluing pieces of paper together and styrofoam and stuff like that. Things you're going to set on your shelf and then throw away in 6 months because you realize how hideous they look. And it's useful for other things as well. It's not super durable. The stuff that you want to get is an industrial grade super glue. Gorilla Glue makes a really good one that I've been using for a while, and I love it because it holds up to heat and it also is you can remove it, but it's not easy. So we're gonna use that today to secure this piece. So we're gonna let our glue gun heat up for a minute. And the one thing I'm not going to show you on this is how to install your electronics. What I will tell you is this panel is removable. If you're printing these, and I'm guessing you are, because that's why you need assembly instructions, because if you got them from me, I send them to you already assembled. So you're going to pull this out. You're going to pull this out of the slice. And if you want to put the alphanumeric display back here, you can pull this one out. If you don't pull them out, you can cut them out. It is very, very thin right there. This is less than 1 millimeter in thickness, so it's very possible to get that out. What you will need to do, though, is if you're going to use this panel here, you will need to create some holes for your buttons and switches, whatever those might be. It all depends on which device you get and what kind of button selection you get with it. If you're handy with electronics, you could always put on a different button. So, yeah, that's doable. All right, so our hot glue should be heated up enough by now to just do a demonstration. You're just going to want to use a very small amount, but if you kind of go a little bit over into the tray, it's really not a big deal because the whole point of using this is that it's removable. And you can ultimately get the part back off. All right, I think this is the right way. Yes, okay. So yeah, we're just going to glue that in and hold it. And it doesn't need to be all the way up against the edge. It could be back from the edge a little bit. But you're going to want to hold this long enough for the super glue to cool off. I mean, for the hot glue to not be hot anymore. And then everything will stay together. And that should hold up pretty well. All right, on to the hinge. So these gauntlets, if you build them in their native scale, will use a 1.5 millimeter steel rod or some kind of metal rod. I buy these 1.5 millimeter by 300 millimeter stainless steel rods to use as hinges in my gauntlets. You can also use piano wire. I have done that before. You can get that at the hardware store. I don't think the hardware store has this, but I could be wrong. Stainless steel is nice though because it won't rust. So how do I do it? Well, I got a hinge hole here, or hinge slot here, and a hinge slot here. This is your longest run for the hinges. So I basically just start at the back, work it through, and as soon as I see it coming out the front, I back it off until it's flush with that end. Okay? So now I'll hold it in position, and I will grab it with these pliers and slide it out. Next thing I'll do is bend this. Now these pliers are actually better for this because they kind of are like pliers and an anvil all at the same time. So, but this 1.5 millimeter rod is very easy to bend. Certainly easier to bend than the 2 millimeter rod. So I'm going to go ahead and come back with these and just kind of bend this around a little bit now. And once I get it to about this far, then I can put this into here. Before I do that though, I want to trim off this short piece. We don't need all of that. So we want to leave about that much, but it's at your discretion. Can you see it? Okay, we want to leave, oh, we'll see after I cut it. That's about what you want it to look like. So then we'll take this and we'll kind of just put it in like that. And then we're going to give it a squeeze. And you're going to want to work your way up. Now with the piano wire, this is kind of tricky. Piano wire has a tendency to break when you bend it like this. So I really recommend using the stainless steel rods. They're not that expensive. And you'll have spares if you decide to make more gauntlets for yourself or for friends or family. You'll have enough rods to make 6 pairs. So, and like I said, they're not that expensive. They're worth having around. You could use them for other things, potentially. So basically what you want to end up with is something like this. The rod goes in, and you've got enough of a crimp now to where this will slip over the plastic. If the plastic's trimmed out, right now it's got an elephant's foot on it, so it's not really going the way it should. But basically, this will kind of clothespin itself. There we go, onto plastic like that. If you want to remove it, just grab the end of it with some pliers and pull it out. Let's go ahead and put one of these together. So basically, to put it together, you got a slot here that this side fits into, and then this whole thing goes together like this. Your hinges line up, and then you go ahead and put your rod in. Make sure it goes all the way through. Okay, again, we've got that elephant's foot there. So there we go. There we go. Okay, so now the way these gauntlets work is they are pressure fit. The bottom is actually printed just slightly wider than this. So you got to give them a squeeze. But once you do that, they will open up. You can put your arm in, close them, and again, you're going to just give them a little push, and they should hook. And you're good to go. All right. So that's how you do the hinges. As for the remainder, we've got the flamethrower. The way the flamethrower is designed to work is it utilizes K&S 3/16 of an inch diameter brass tubes. These are hobby brass. You can find these at hardware stores like Ace. I have seen them at Lowe's, and I'm pretty sure Home Depot has these also in their hardware section. You'll have to hunt around for them there because they don't have a specific metal section that would have these, whereas Ace and Lowe's have a metal section that has, you know, a whole rack of brass and copper and aluminum and different extrusions like these cylinders and also squares. So I will get 1 foot sections. Occasionally I can find a 3 foot section, and this is a heck of a deal. If you're planning on doing multiple things that want to use brass tube, this is a great way to go from a cost standpoint. Now, there's a couple of ways to cut this tube. If you're really slick and you got a jigsaw or a scroll saw or a bandsaw, then you can use that. If you've got a little miter saw, you can also use that. I started with this. This is a hobby saw, and this one's completely worn out. I actually just got a new one the other day, but I'm going to probably showcase that on a separate video. But this will cut through brass tubing. It doesn't cut it perfectly straight, though. So if you end up using this, make sure you make your cut so that you have at least one good end, one of the good native ends for showcasing it, for displaying it. The better way to cut this stuff, if you don't have power saws and things like that, is with a tubing cutter, and that's what this is. And basically, this just fits around the tube. So you want to mark the length, and I will give you the length of these tubes right now. This one is just over 4 inches by like 4 1/16. 4 1/16 inches for the long tube, and the shorter tube is 1 3/4. So you can go a little bit slightly longer on both of those measurements, like, a 16th or half of that. What is that, a 32nd? I don't have metric on this thing here, so I can't give you the metric, but I can put the metric measurements into the description for the video. So hopefully I won't forget to do that. All right, so basically the way this goes together is you got a long side and a short side. This is your base piece here. The long side goes through the heavier cylinder. and we'll build alongside first. Then you have another 2-piece section, and the part with the windows goes over alongside. You want this pointed part pointing out because our small tube is going to go into here and terminate right about there. So now we've got that on. Then you have this piece, this sort of heat sink looking guy, and I think that it needs to be like this. But the nice thing about these parts being assembled by you is you can make them go any way you want. Actually, I think it's going to work better like this. You'll see why in a second. Because our next piece is this. This is part of the emitter, I guess, or the nozzle, as it were. And then finally, we've got our tip, and that goes on like that. And you really want the brass to come all the way through so that it's flush with the end of the tip. Okay? And if you're happy with that, go ahead and put a little glue on there. You could just put glue on each end, and that would probably be sufficient to hold it. Now we have our second piece, which is going to go just like this. And you can see our two ends are pretty close. Okay, so we can do this, and if you want to, you could always trim it off a little bit, or you could even have a little bit of that sticking out on the end. Now we're pretty much flush. We're going to go ahead and you're going to want to glue this in, and you have the option of either putting it this way or this way. It's up to you. So here we'll do it with the large flame emitter sticking up and the smaller one on the bottom. But you can do it however you want. And you can also space these parts out too if you want to see more of the brass. You don't have to have them perfectly touching each other. You can do something like that. So there's a lot of options here with the flamethrower. And that's how that goes. The rest of it should be explanatory via pictures. Got lots and lots of pictures of this particular model on my Etsy site. So you can get what you need from that. And until then, that's going to do it. Oh, one final note. I'm not sure if I mentioned it. The whipcord and the flamethrower are held on with 12 millimeter M3 screws. The Whistling Bird Dinjarin style is held on with two 16 millimeter screws, and you put the base on first, screw it together. Now this is hollow. It's designed to be able to take the universal Whistling Bird light up that's made by Calavera Arms, I think is the company on Etsy. If you do that, you're going to want to remove this block here. But I did put a hole up front. If you drill a small hole, I believe it's going to be just bigger than 1/8 or just smaller than 1/8. If you're not sure, just hold your drill bit up to the end of the screw because you want the drill hole to be just slightly smaller than the end of the screw. You don't want it to be bigger because once you do that, then you can thread a screw into the plastic without a threaded insert. But you could also make a pilot hole, and then you could heat set a threaded insert into there as well. But that's at your discretion. This is the way it comes normally. If you decide to modify it, that's how I would recommend doing it, by removing this center post. That way you've got enough space in there for the universal Whistling Birds. The holes go all the way through, so you don't have to drill these out. They're open inside and all the way through. So you're pretty much good to go. All right. It'll be a tight fit, but it'll work. It doesn't work with the motorized ones. It's not big enough to use those, but it will use the static ones that will turn on in sequence. And honestly, that's a pretty cool effect. So there you have it. I will include this file, but I'll also do a quick little demo in Orca to show you how you can make something like this. Enjoy. Thanks for watching.
So now that the most pertinent and technical aspects of this assembly have been covered, I'll leave the small details to you. For reference of what the gauntlets should look like, here's some pics. course, you can easily view the high-res versions of these pics at my Etsy shop. There's a link in the description. But you don't have to build them out exactly like me. There are plenty of ways that you can explore your creativity with these gauntlets and create something totally unique and totally yours. Well, that does it for now, but if you've still got questions, let me hear from you in the comments. If you learned something and enjoyed the content, leave a like and consider subscribing. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.